I wasn't cold when they buried me. I was burning with betrayal. 4 years ago, they lowered a closed casket into the Whitmore family grave, surrounded by white roses and whispered lies. Brandon gave the eulogy. Dela wore black, weeping softly behind a designer veil. Angela stood a step back, silent, unreadable. They buried my body with praise and moved on with their lives, too quickly, too comfortably. But what none of them knew was this: I didn't die in that crash. They called it an accident. But how does a seatbelt fail in a car maintained weekly? How does a brake line snap when the car was just cleared by a mechanic the day before? How does Brandon walk away with nothing more than a scratch, while I'm found unconscious and declared unsalvageable within hours? The answer is simple. Brandon made sure I didn't wake up. But I did. A body stitched back together, a name replaced on paper, and a family photo retaken without me. I watched it all unfold from afar. News articles, Whitmore Foundation updates, holiday cards with my name scrubbed out, his face in my place. And now I'm back. Not as a ghost, not as a shadow, as Frank Whitmore, the name on the original inheritance clause. The Whitmore gates still remember me. I keyed in the code, my code, and the iron doors creaked open without resistance. The estate loomed ahead, glowing under the dusk light. I stepped out of the car with a single envelope in hand, my suit pressed, my voice steady. When the front door opened, Dela stood there, her eyes widened, the color drained from her face, her wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered across the marble floor. "Frank?" I nodded once. "Miss me?" She stumbled backward. "You're supposed to be dead," I finished. "That was the plan, wasn't it?" Angela appeared next, quieter. Her gaze locked on mine, mouth slightly parted. "You came back." "I never left." Then Brandon walked in, holding a glass of whiskey, laughing at something only he could find funny, until he saw me. The color didn't just leave his face, it fled. "Impossible," he said. "You can't be." "I can." I took a step inside, handed the envelope to Dela. She didn't take it. I placed it gently on the entry table beside the vase she once said was too ugly to throw away. "It's from Father's lawyer, final revision of the will." Brandon scoffed. "This is some kind of stunt." "No," I replied. "This is closure." Dela finally spoke. "We buried you. I held You lied, and then you let him move into my room, sit in my chair, steal my legacy." Angela's voice was soft. "Why now?" I looked her in the eye. "Because the clause activates tomorrow. The Whitmore estate doesn't go to the most present son, it goes to the first one." Brandon's voice rose. "You were declared legally dead. And yet," I said, "here I stand." His jaw clenched. "You're not welcome here." I smiled. "That's the thing about inheritance, Brandon. It doesn't ask for permission." He stepped closer, voice dropping low. "You won't win." I leaned in. "I already did." Angela didn't move. Dela looked like she might faint. And Brandon looked exactly the way he had 4 years ago behind the wheel of that car. Calm, calculated, dangerous. They say the dead can't speak, but I came back to prove that the silenced always find a voice, and mine had just begun. The last time I saw Dela, she was smiling, not the real kind, not the kind you fall in love with, no, it was the smile she wore when someone was watching, the one she practiced in mirrors and storefront reflections, the one she wore at banquets and board meetings. That smile was polished, distant, and trained to convince. She wore it at my funeral. We'd been together 3 years when I died, 3 years of cold takeout, burning ambition, and late-night promises. Dela was never soft, never sentimental, but there were moments when she let the mask slip, moments when she let her guard down, usually around midnight, usually with her head on my chest, whispering things she'd never admit in daylight. She was always chasing legacy. I didn't blame her. Growing up inside the Whitmore dynasty meant your name had weight, but your worth was always tested. Dela wanted more than to marry into the family, she wanted her place etched in history. Being with me gave her that. I was Charles Whitmore's only son, the firstborn, the rightful heir. Until Brandon. Brandon was my cousin. Barely. His mother was Charles's estranged sister who married a man the family never approved of. He didn't grow up in the estate, he didn't attend our schools. He didn't wear the crest, didn't earn the name. But after the accident, after I was gone, he suddenly became palatable. He was brought in, groomed, styled, seated at the table. And Dela? She didn't just accept it, she embraced it. When I disappeared from the headlines, Brandon replaced me in the annual company report. When my seat was left vacant at the boardroom, Brandon filled it. And when the Whitmore holiday card went out that winter, the family photo didn't just leave a gap where I should have been, it placed Brandon beside my father, with Dela's hand hooked through his arm. I'd stared at that photo for 2 straight hours when I first saw it online. Nay. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erased. But it wasn't Dela that hurt the most, it was Angela. Angela was my childhood friend, the kind of girl who sat next to me on the first day of school and never once looked away. She was always there, at every parentless dinner, every awkward dance, every moment I didn't know I needed someone. While Dela loved the future I represented, Angela knew the version of me from the past. She understood things without needing me to explain. She never tried to fix me, she just stayed. And when I was declared dead, she didn't show up in the family photo, she stayed out of frame. That meant something. When I returned, I didn't go to Angela first. I thought about it. I even stood across from her apartment once, just staring at the window with the pale yellow light. But I didn't knock. I couldn't. Because if she looked at me the way Dela did, like I was a ghost, I might have turned around and vanished for real. I came back because I had to. Charles Whitmore died last week. He left behind an empire that stretched across 6 industries, 4 continents, and 3 generations. He also left behind one final revision of his will, filed 2 months before the accident that nearly killed me. He never removed my name. That clause was simple. In the event of my death, full inheritance, financial and estate, shall pass to my biological heir, Franklin Elias Whitmore. No loopholes, no substitutions, no Brandon. The lawyer had verified it, the court had acknowledged it, now all that remained was for me to prove I was who I said I was. DNA, already submitted, legal identity, restored, intent, very, very clear. The Whitmore legacy wasn't a trophy, it wasn't revenge, it was mine. When I walked into the estate and saw them again, the silence said everything. Dela stood frozen like a wax figure. Angela remained composed, but I saw the faint quiver in her finger. Or is Brandon? He had the audacity to smirk, like he'd rehearsed 100 ways to deny me. But I didn't give him the script. He stepped forward first. Frank, I don't know what game you're playing. I cut him off. This isn't Monopoly, Brandon. You don't pass go, you don't collect anything. His smile faded. You think you can just walk in and... I think, I said slowly, that I never should have had to walk back at all. Dela looked between us like she was trying to calculate which direction the power was shifting. She'd always been a strategist, more chess than emotion. Her loyalty was a negotiation, not a promise. Frank, she said finally, her voice thin, no one ever replaced you. I nodded toward the framed photo still hanging above the staircase, Brandon in my spot, Dela beside him, my father wearing the only fake smile I'd ever seen him give. No one? I asked. That must be my ghost in the frame. Angela said nothing. Her silence didn't scream. It echoed. I turned to her. You knew, didn't you? She met my eyes. I knew you weren't dead. Brandon scoffed. This is ridiculous. He shows up out of nowhere and expects what? A parade? A key to the vault? I walked forward until I was inches from him. I expect justice, and legally, I already have it. What comes next is mercy, or the lack of it. Dela placed her hand gently on Brandon's arm, not to support him, but to stop him. He was tense, shaking slightly. I hadn't even raised my voice, but I could see the panic behind his eyes. He knew, deep down, he knew the truth had returned. Angela finally spoke again. The will goes public in the morning, doesn't it? I nodded. 8 o'clock, the press will be there. Brandon laughed once, sharp and humorless. You want to embarrass us? No, I said. I want to remind you what happens when you bury someone who isn't dead. No one moved. Dela lowered her eyes. Brandon stepped back. Angela stood steady. I walked toward the staircase, one hand sliding along the empty ends. A mahogany rail I used to race down as a boy. My room was still there, still locked. And tomorrow morning, so was my name. The next morning, the estate was louder than it had ever been in years. The media vans had started arriving just after 7, parking along the white stone wall like vultures. The staff scrambled to keep them off the lawn, while the rest of the family stayed barricaded in the dining room, pretending everything wasn't unraveling. Dela was the first to speak. "We can still control the narrative. Say it's a misunderstanding. Say you were in recovery, some silent, self-imposed exile. We'll spin it into redemption. Audiences eat that up." I stared at her. "You don't get to package my resurrection like it's PR." She folded her arms. "It's better than what they'll say when they find out you showed up with a death certificate still active in half the databases. Or should we talk about how you never contacted anyone all these years? I was in a coma, Dela, then on the run. The system thought I was dead, and someone made damn sure it stayed that way." Brandon poured himself coffee like none of this mattered. "Here we go again, conspiracies, victim narratives. You realize no one believes that anymore, right? You're 4 years late to the funeral." Angela, seated at the far end of the table, finally looked up. "You replaced him, Brandon. Took his name, his room, his seat at the board. You didn't just mourn him, you became him." Brandon laughed. "And who let me? Charles, your father. He's the one who brought me in, who told the world Frank is gone. This is who we have left. I didn't break in through the window, Angela. I was handed the front door key." I clenched my jaw, because I wasn't there to stop him, because I trusted that someone, anyone, would look deeper. But everyone was just relieved to have a replacement. Dela stood. "You think this is all simple, Frank? That we were all celebrating while you disappeared? I cried for weeks. I couldn't eat. I didn't sleep. But life moved on. It always does. Life moved on straight into bed with my cousin." Her hand shot across the table, a clean, stinging slap across my cheek. Brandon shouted, "Don't you dare!" But I didn't flinch. I just turned slowly to face her. "That hurt less than watching you smile in that photo," I said. "You remember? The one where you wore the necklace I gave you, standing beside him like you'd never even heard my name." Dela's voice cracked. "That necklace was the only part of you I could keep without breaking." I didn't reply. There were no words sharp enough to slice through years of polished betrayal. Angela stepped in then. "The press conference is in 40 minutes. The lawyer just arrived." Brandon checked his reflection in the silver tray like he was about to walk into a fashion show, not a public reckoning. "Let's get this over with." The conference was set under the gazebo on the south lawn, a place once used for charity events and summer jazz nights, now turned into a battlefield. Mr. Crawford, the family's longtime attorney, adjusted his tie before stepping up to the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Today, we are here to finalize the inheritance of the late Mr. Charles Whitmore." The flash of cameras was relentless. Crawford continued, "As per Mr. Whitmore's final revised testament, dated 2 months prior to his passing, the estate and corporate interests are to be inherited in full by his biological son and legal heir, Franklin Elias Whitmore." There was an audible gasp. Crawford didn't pause. This document was verified under oath, authenticated by the court and filed in accordance with all federal requirements. Mr. Whitmore's declaration was final and legally binding. B. Randon stepped forward. "Excuse me, if I may, there must be some mistake. Frank was declared dead. His reappearance is questionable at best. I've managed the family's holdings for 4 years. I've built everything back from the edge. Are we really going to hand that over to someone who's been absent without explanation?" Crawford didn't flinch. Mr. Brandon Whitmore was never officially adopted. His stewardship was temporary. The law favors the rightful heir. Brandon's face turned red. "This is a farce. He could be anyone. He shows up out of nowhere with a story and suddenly everything resets?" I stepped to the mic. "Would you like to run another DNA test, Brandon? I have one from last week, and one from the year I was born. The courts accepted both." Dela stood beside Brandon, visibly torn. She looked out over the reporters, searching for words. "Frank was a part of this family, always. But the world moved without him. You can't blame us for grieving the only way we knew how." Angela crossed her arms. "Grieving doesn't look like replacing someone." Dela turned sharply. "You wouldn't understand, Angela. You stayed out of everything. You didn't pick sides, you just disappeared." Angela's expression didn't change. "Because I was the only one who still believed he'd come back, and I refused to help you build a throne out of his absence." The silence that followed was thick. Brandon broke it, stepping away from the mic. I'm done here. He turned to Dela. Are you coming? She hesitated. Look at me. Then I looked at Angela. I need time. Brandon scoffed. You've had 4 years. He walked off the lawn alone, jacket tossed over one shoulder like none of this mattered, but I saw it in his shoulders, tight, hunched, small. He wasn't winning anymore. After the press cleared and Crawford finished the legal statements, I stayed behind. Angela stayed too. You all right? She asked. I don't know what that word means anymore, I said. She looked at me, then touched my wrist. Then start redefining it. On your terms. I nodded. For the first time, I realized, returning wasn't just about claiming what was mine. It was about confronting everything they became when I wasn't around to stop them, and that meant the conflict was only just beginning. I sat in the study my father once used, the one Brandon had taken over and redecorated like it was his kingdom. The leather chair still bore his scent, cheap cologne masked as class, and the cigar tray on the corner was his, not my father's. But the books, they were untouched. Dustless from the maid's hand, not Brandon's fingers. He hadn't read a word, he only sat in this room to look powerful. The shadows on the walls stretched long as dusk came in. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want to see myself reflected in the glass of the old family portrait, the original one, the one from when I was 16 and Charles still smiled like he meant it. I didn't know how to feel. Everyone thought coming back was the hardest part. It wasn't. The hardest part was realizing that no one stopped living when I was gone. That the world reshaped itself without resistance, that Brandon's face had already softened into familiarity, that my absence became someone else's opportunity, that I wasn't missed, I was replaced. Dela's words kept repeating in my head. You think we didn't grieve? But what was grief measured in? A single funeral, a few weeks of silence, a pair of black heels worn long enough to be seen, then tossed aside once it was socially acceptable to start smiling again? She didn't just mourn me. She moved on, into Brandon's arms, and Angela. Sweet, steady Angela, the only one who hadn't betrayed me. But even she hadn't written, hadn't called, hadn't searched, she just waited. And now that I was back, she treated me like I hadn't missed 4 years of her life. But I had. 4 years where birthdays passed without candles, where winter came and no one thought to bring flowers to the grave, not even fake ones. I wasn't angry with her. But I was tired. So tired. And the worst part? I didn't know who I was supposed to be anymore. Frank Whitmore, the name still carried power. Legacy, money. But did it carry love? Did it carry trust? I'd been gone for so long that even my own name felt like an echo. I picked up one of the old fountain pens on the desk and scribbled a few lines across the edge of a page. My name, just to see it in my own handwriting. But it looked foreign. The curve of the F, the slant of the K, it felt like someone else's script. A name people had spoken in past tense for years. A ghost. The room suddenly felt too still. I pushed the chair back and stood. Pacing didn't help. The thoughts followed. What if I was the problem now? What if returning didn't set things right, but only made them worse? I pressed my palm against the old window pane and watched the lawn below. Brandon was outside, talking to someone, not yelling, not fuming, calm, too calm. His back was to me, but I recognized his posture, shoulders straight, chin high, as if rehearsing confidence. He was preparing something, scheming. Brandon never lost gracefully, that wasn't in his nature. And the press conference hadn't humiliated him enough. Not yet. I turned from the window and stared at the envelope on the desk, the one with my name on it. Not just any letter, my father's final handwritten message. I hadn't read it yet, not fully. I didn't know if I could. What if it didn't say what I needed it to? What if Charles regretted everything and had left behind nothing but apologies to Brandon? What if my return had disturbed more than just inheritance? What if it had shattered illusions that were easier left unbroken? Angela knocked once and entered without waiting. She always did that. Even as kids. She looked at me, then the unopened letter. You haven't read it? I shook my head. Why? Because it might be the last time he speaks to me, I said. And I'm not ready to hear what he really thought. Angela stepped forward, slowly, then stopped 2 feet away. Frank, I have to tell you something. I turned toward her. She looked nervous. Brandon, he didn't just step into your role, she said. He manipulated Dela. He manipulated your father. After the crash, he started showing up with documents, medical reports, signed affidavits that you were beyond saving. I frowned. And no one questioned him? She looked down. Your father did, at first, but then, he changed. He got sick. We didn't know how sick we were, and Brandon kept feeding him the story, over and over, until even Charles stopped asking. I closed my eyes, so it was all fabricated, a lie layered over more lies, sealed by a fake grave and a convenient cousin. Angela moved closer. Her voice softened. I saw the documents. After your father died, I found them, all forged. And Brandon, he forged charade. It's his signature on the temporary leadership agreement. My hands balled into fists. That's criminal. I know. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't know who you'd become. That hurt more than I expected. I looked at her, jaw tight. So now you do? She hesitated, then nodded. I do. I looked at the letter again. Finally, I sat and peeled it open. The seal cracked like a bone snapping. The first line made my breath catch. If you're reading this, it means I was wrong, and I hope you came back anyway. Angela waited quietly as I read. The words weren't elegant, but they were honest. Charles knew something was off. He doubted Brandon. He missed me. Regretted how fast he listened to others. He apologized. He said he was proud of who I was becoming. That he hoped one day, if the world bent right, I would find my way home and take what was mine, not for revenge, but to protect it from people like Brandon. At the end, he wrote something that made my hands tremble. Son, legacy is more than money. It's a memory. It's how we're remembered by those we leave behind. Make them remember you for truth. Angela placed a hand on my shoulder. It was small, steady. You okay? She asked. No, I whispered, but I will be. Because I had something now that Brandon never would. A name that didn't need stealing. A father who still believed in me. And a reason to fight beyond anger. I wasn't just reclaiming my legacy. I was rebuilding it. Brick by brick. One truth at a time. The estate was quiet at night, too quiet. You'd think that after all the drama of the will, the air would settle, but no, stillness has its own kind of tension, especially in houses built on secrets. I was walking past the east hallway when I heard a voice, low, urgent, the kind of tone people use when they don't want to be overheard. I paused. Brandon's voice came through first, muffled but distinct. How said the documents were destroyed. Then another voice, female, tight, annoyed. I burned the originals. That's what you asked me to do. I moved closer, staying behind the corridor's archway. The voice belonged to Dela. Brandon hissed, and the copies? Crawford had one. He said it wasn't official since Charles never signed it in front of him. But now that Frank's back, it doesn't matter, does it? Brandon slammed something, maybe his glass, against the wall. This wasn't the plan. You were supposed to marry me. That sealed everything. Why are you hesitating now? Dela's laugh was sharp. Maybe because I didn't think he'd survive a crash meant to kill him. I stopped breathing. Brandon muttered something I couldn't catch. Then Dela spoke again, calmer, colder. You were the one behind it. Don't act like you did it for me. You wanted the name, the power, the seat. I just wanted out. But now he's back, and everything's ruined. You helped, Brandon growled. You drove him to that site. You delayed the call for help. Don't put it all on me. There was silence. Then she whispered, I know. I stepped back before I could do something reckless. So that was it. Dela didn't just mourn me, she orchestrated the accident that nearly killed me. Brandon might have pulled the wires, but she lit the match, and now they were both unraveling because the fire came back. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I invited Crawford to the study. Angela sat beside me, calm as ever, but her fingers tapped silently against her thigh. I need to revise the estate's leadership, I told him. Crawford adjusted his glasses. You want to cut Brandon out? More than that, I want to audit everything, accounts, transfers, the leadership board. I want full control reinstated to me immediately. He hesitated. That's going to create noise. I'm counting on it. Angela handed him a folder. These are copies of forged signatures we discovered in Brandon's safe last night. Crawford blinked. Forgery? I nodded. Including a fabricate. Medical report stating I was in a permanent vegetative state. His face darkened. That's serious criminal fraud. Good, I said. Let's treat it like that. I left Crawford to handle the paperwork and walked out to the garden. That's where I found Dela, alone, hair tied back, no makeup, just her and the wind. You knew I was alive, I said without greeting. She didn't turn around. I suspected. But you didn't care. Now she looked at me. Her face was unreadable. You don't get it, Frank. You think I chose Brandon over you. I didn't. I chose survival. That's your excuse? No, she said. That's my truth. I folded my arms. You were the last person I saw before the crash. You delayed calling for help. You brought Brandon to the hospital. You told the staff I didn't have family nearby. Do you understand how deliberate that sounds? Tears formed in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I panicked. We were fighting. You said you wanted out of everything. The family, the company, me. You said you were done. I believed you. I thought you were walking away. I said I needed time. She looked down. You never came back. I couldn't. Dela finally sat down on the garden bench. Her voice dropped. You think I loved Brandon? That I wanted this life with him? He made himself useful. He told me you were never coming back. That Charles already signed new documents, that the estate would fall apart without leadership. I believed it. I let him use my grief and then I used his ambition. And now? She looked at me. Now I look at you and I see everything I thought I'd buried, and I hate myself. That doesn't change anything. She nodded. I know, but you needed to hear it. Angela approached quietly from behind. She glanced at Dela, then turned to me. They've frozen Brandon's offshore accounts. Crawford's moving faster than expected. Good, I said. Dela's shoulders slumped. You're going to ruin him. I didn't reply. She looked at Angela. Are you going to replace me too? Angela's eyes were ice. No, because I never betrayed him. Dela swallowed and rose from the bench. Then tell him what you've been hiding. Angela stiffened. I frowned. What's she talking about? Dela shrugged. Ask her. Then she walked away. Angela was silent. I turned. Angela? She stared at the ground. There's something I need to tell you. Angela didn't speak right away. She just looked at me, eyes wide with hesitation, like she'd been preparing this moment in her head for years but never thought it would actually come. Tell me, I said. I didn't look for you, she finally whispered. Not when the car crashed, not when they buried you, not when Brandon moved in. My pulse quickened. Why? Because I already knew where you were. My heart stopped mid-beat. What do you mean you knew? Angela swallowed hard. That night, after the crash, I got a message. What kind of message? She reached into her jacket and pulled out her old phone. It was cracked around the edges, screen dim with age, but still working. She pulled up a message thread, opened a photo. My breath caught. It was me, lying in a hospital bed, bandaged, unconscious, pale but alive. A date stamp in the corner, 2 days after the crash. The sender was listed as a random number, but the message was chilling. If you care about him, keep quiet, don't search, don't speak, he's being watched. I took the phone from her, staring at the picture as if I could step into it and rewrite time. Why didn't you tell anyone? I asked, voice low. Because I thought it was real. I thought, if I said see you at something, you'd be killed. It wasn't just a warning, it was a threat. And then the message stopped. I tried calling it back. It was disconnected. I was scared, Frank. And after a while, when nobody was ever shown, I thought maybe it was mercy to let the world believe you were gone. And you thought not telling my family, letting Brandon steal my name, was protection? Angela looked like she might cry. I thought I was saving your life. I turned away from her, my mind spiraling. So while I was unconscious, someone was orchestrating silence. Brandon, Dela, someone else entirely? And Angela, she wasn't in on it. but she became part of it by doing nothing. I clenched my fists. You let them bury me, and then you watched them replace me. She moved closer. I didn't know what to do. You could have tried. Once, just once. Angela's voice broke. I regret it every day. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I walked past her, straight to my father's old study. Crawford was still there, sorting through documents. I want the audit results, I said. Crawford nodded, handing me a folder. We've uncovered some serious misconduct. Brandon rerouted charitable donations, leveraged shell companies through offshore accounts, and funneled funds from the trust into private holdings. He did this for 3 years straight. It's all here. And what about Dela? She signed off on several of the transactions. I closed the folder. Angela entered the room behind me. I felt her presence but didn't acknowledge it. We're going public, I told Crawford. Tomorrow, full statement. He hesitated. That will destroy them. I met his eyes. They buried me. I'm just digging out. Crawford nodded and left. Angela stepped forward. Frank, Don't, I said. She stopped. I finally looked at her. You had the one thing no one else did, the truth, and you locked it away. You let me rot in memory while they rewrote the script. I know, she whispered. And if there's anything I can do to undo that, there isn't. She looked down. I never meant to become part of the betrayal. Sometimes silence is louder than betrayal. The room went quiet. That night, I walked the halls alone. I passed the family photo one more time, the newer one, Brandon in my place, Dela's hand on his shoulder. It used to enrage me, now, it disgusted me, so I took it down. I carried it into the garden and shattered the glass against the old marble fountain. Angela watched from the window. She didn't come out, she knew better now. The next morning, the statement went live. National outlets picked it up immediately. Frank Whitmore returns from the dead, exposes cousin's fraud. Within an hour, Brandon was on the phone with legal. His lawyer tried to stall, claiming miscommunication, but the evidence was airtight. Charles's handwritten will, the forged documents, the stolen funds, it all added up. Dela tried damage control, called the board, pleaded for discretion, but no one was listening anymore. By noon, both were issued formal subpoenas. Brandon stormed into the estate at 3 p.m. He threw open the study doors like he still owned the place. You think this is justice? He shouted. You humiliated me. I stood calmly behind the desk. You humiliated yourself. You gambled with a corpse and lost it when it stood back up. You're ruining the family name. No, I said. I'm taking it back. He pointed a shaking finger at me. I was there when your father needed someone. I kept this house running. I made sure the company didn't fall. You think that doesn't matter? You ran to this place like a thief who found the safe unlocked. You didn't lead, you looted. Brandon's jaw tightened. I deserve something. You deserve handcuffs. His hand twitched like he might lunge, but he didn't. He turned to leave. This isn't over. Yes, I said, it is. He left without another word. Angela approached an hour later, standing in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she was allowed in. Are you going to exile me too? She asked. I looked at her, really looked. No, I said. But you need to understand something. I can't be who I was before. That version of me died, and the version who came back, he doesn't forget. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not offering it. She nodded. Then what now? I looked out the window at the estate grounds. Now I will rebuild, without Brandon, without Dela, without anyone who forgot who I was. Angela stepped forward. Can I stay? I didn't answer, but I didn't ask her to leave. Because deep down, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be alone anymore, or if I just didn't want to be betrayed again. And maybe that was the biggest truth of all. 3 weeks later, the Whitmore estate stood quieter than it had in a decade. No reporters, no lawyers, no frauds in designer shoes pretending to be family. Just me, Franklin Elias Whitmore, firstborn, rightful heir, the one they buried, but couldn't erase. The audit concluded exactly how I expected. Brandon had laundered nearly $2.8 million through shell foundations and trust disbursements masked as international consulting fees. Dela had co-signed on half of them, Some said she was manipulated, others said she was complicit. I didn't care. When the board voted to remove both from any position related to the Whitmore Group, I sat at the head of the table and didn't blink. I watched Brandon's proxy lawyer squirm, watched Dela avoid my eyes. The motion passed unanimously. That was the legal closure. But revenge isn't legal, it's personal. And mine had one final chapter. The media had turned the Whitmore resurrection into a fascination. I was invited to talk shows, legacy magazines, even a documentary pitch. I declined all of it. I didn't need the world to know how I survived. I needed them to know what I became after. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, I released the footage. The hospital security video from 4 years ago. The one where Dela left the emergency wing only 20 minutes after I arrived unconscious. The one where she made a call to Brandon. And the one where Brandon stood outside the ICU and smiled as the nurse marked me down as no known immediate family present. No narration, no commentary. Just a quiet press release with the footage and one headline. Dead men don't lie, but the living did. It exploded. Social media turned into a firestorm. Hashtags flew. Hashtag Whitmore. Truth. After he was buried alive. Frank returns. News anchors called it the inheritance scandal of the century. Dela released a statement begging for understanding, said she was young, under pressure, confused by grief, claimed Brandon lied to her, that she only discovered the truth later. Brandon denied everything, again, said the footage was out of context, but context didn't matter, the world had already decided, their reputations were obliterated, no brand partnerships, no board seats, no charity galas. Brandon tried to flee to Singapore, his assets were frozen within hours. Dela disappeared from social media, rumor said she moved to a small coastal town. I didn't verify it, I didn't care. Angela remained. She didn't ask for forgiveness again, she just stayed. She showed up to meetings, she worked late into the night restructuring the mess left behind, she didn't hover or over-apologize. She earned her way back with quiet loyalty and unshaken presence. It was enough. And maybe that's why, 1 month later, I let her into the old greenhouse, the one I used to hide in as a kid. She stood beside me, arms crossed, watching as I turned the soil with my father's rusted trowel. "You're really going to bring this place back to life?" she asked. I glanced at her. It was left to rot, but the roots are still here. "Like you," she said. I paused, then nodded. "Exactly like me." Angela looked at me for a long moment. "You never said you hated me." I kept digging. "I did." "Do you still?" I stopped, turned toward her. "No," I said. "But I don't forget." "I can live with that," she whispered. We didn't say anything for a while after that. It was the most peaceful silence I'd known since returning. The final act came on a rainy morning, the same kind of rain that followed me out of the hospital 4 years ago. I stood at the gates of the cemetery, umbrella in one hand, envelope in the other. Brandon stood under a tree nearby, hands in his pockets. He looked smaller now, not physically, just emptied. I didn't go to him. I placed the envelope on the gravestone marked with my name. The same fake stone they'd buried nothing under. Inside the envelope was the final signed transfer, the last of the holdings my father left in trust, now moved under my control. That stone didn't belong to me anymore. I had outlived it. I turned to leave. Brandon stepped forward. "You win," he said. His voice wasn't bitter, just hollow. "No," I replied. "I survived, and now I'm done playing." He tried to speak again, but I didn't wait. Closure isn't about who speaks last, it's about who walks away first, and I walked. Out of the grave they dug for me, out of the legacy they tried to rewrite, out of the shadow of the man they thought they could replace. Back into the life that was always mine. Frank Whitmore wasn't just back. He was unforgettable.